Hey guys, today we're going to dive into the prison epistles of Paul the Apostle. Try saying that 5 times fast. So, Paul the Apostle, he's the one that wrote the good majority of the New Testament. We know him from books like Romans and Galatians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, so on and so forth. But today we're going to dive in onto 4 of those books or letters that he wrote, which is Colossians, Ephesians, Philippians, and Philemon. The reason why we're going to look at those is because he wrote those towards the end of his story while he was in Roman confinement. To understand how we get there, though, let's go ahead back to AD 58, a couple years before that confinement, to kind of understand the backdrop. So Paul is in the middle of his journey going all over the Mediterranean area of the first century. And here we see him visiting Jerusalem. A lot of people were so excited to see the apostle, and then there were some that just really weren't. So the Christians welcomed him, but the Jews, it really caused an uproar for the Jews in that area, to the point to where they get him in front of King Agrippa, which represented the law. And King Agrippa, if you don't know who that is, he's the grandson of Herod the Great, who wanted to get Jesus killed as a baby, to kind of give you a heads up. So this doesn't look too good. Well, he ends up sympathizing with Paul, and Paul ends up getting out of Jerusalem, but he would make his way ultimately to Rome, where he would eventually meet his end before Caesar Nero at the end. But I digress. I'm going way too far. When he first gets to Rome, he does get confined, but it's more of like a house arrest. So it was kind of comfortable. He still can meet with people, and he could still encourage the church. And the way that he did that outside of meeting with people directly was writing these 4 letters. Starting off with the book of Colossians, we have a book written to the church of Colossae. This church, to give you a heads up, they were allowing synergistic and heretical teachings. This is going to be a common theme in the letters that we see with Paul, because you have to remember, you have Jewish culture and Gentile culture coming into making the Christian church. So Paul had to address Christian culture very much in these letters. So back to Colossians. What they were doing was they were mixing Christianity, the church of Colossae, with paganism and Greek teachings all together. So Paul needed to address this because they were undermining Christ's divinity. So he emphasizes sound doctrine. This is a great book to dive into if you want to learn about Christian orthodoxy, if you will, from that perspective. And this also emphasizes Christ's divinity and his lordship. Next, we have Ephesians, which is for the church of Ephesus, one of my favorite prison epistles. It's actually nicknamed the queen of the prison epistles. And you have to understand about the church of Ephesus. It was really a mecca for Gentile ways of thinking, Gentile religion, and there was a lot to address. In this letter, we actually see it kind of broken up into 2 halves. So if you look at it through this filter, it's going to help your study big time. If you look at it from chapters 1 through 3, it's about the story of the gospel and how it relates. And then secondly, 4 through 6 is about our story and how we're interwoven into that gospel narrative. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing if you look at it from that perspective. But we get a lot of our modern day theologies from this book. So we think about the 5-fold ministry. It challenges polygon thinking with using themes of like oneness or one God, one spirit, one family, etc. Then we get the Christian household example, which is still used in wedding ceremonies till today, which is men love your wives like Jesus loves his church, women respect your husbands, so on and so forth. And it's one of my favorite books. So check it out. The book of Philippians. That's a great book. It's to the church of Philippi. And this is Paul's response to receiving a good gift from people that he called friends. The key theme in this, if you read it from a bird's eye view, is really joy, or to rejoice. And he kind of gives a 6-point kind of outline throughout this scripture. He says pretty much a commentary of his situation in Rome, exhortations to behavior worthy of the gospel life, plans involving Timothy and Epaphroditus. Yeah, I had to Google that one, that's for sure. And then warnings against Judaism and antinomianism, which is another thing I Googled, but it's really the idea that Christianity releases us from our responsibility to moral law. He gives exhortations to unify and to have joy with one another and to have peace, and then thanksgiving for their generosity. Lastly, we've got the book of Philemon. This is the only epistle that Paul doesn't mention Jesus' death and resurrection, but because he's communicating in a different way through his position that he's urging the church to take regarding Philemon and his slave, Onesius. Now, there's two theories on this. Ultimately, he was either a slave on the run from his master, or he was a slave on the run for his master, which there's debates on that. You can read about that later on. But ultimately, Paul writes these between late 60 to 62 AD. He gets released for a brief time before appearing before Nero, like the angel told him to. But unfortunately, he would be first century canceled. So that's pretty much the story of the prison epistles. I hope you enjoy it while you do your studying on that. I'll see you next time.